Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far as Rostermania continues its very slow burn. We've got some interesting discussions emerging. ZooMaa wading into the age-old Call of Duty debate of which era was exactly stronger, saying that Prime ZooMaa would definitely be smoking Prime HyDra even as good as he's been over the last couple of years, and also some questions on whether MettalZ could return to the CDL, and if he did, where would he go, and would the team be any good? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Couple of things first of all, Scrappy and Hixie is always getting into a bit of a back and forth. Of course, we have wondered over the last couple of days, let's say Toronto don't sell Scrappy after all, he stays on that team, and they can't come to agreement with either Cloud9 or Thieves, and it's definitely a possibility that happens. We've seen it before, we may well see it again. However, as I said, if that is the case, I would expect someone to be gone, and Envoy has interest, we think, from both Cloud9 and Thieves potentially as well. So in that scenario, they might be in a world where it's Scrap, Insight, CleanX again looking for one. Could they bring Hixie back? I mean, seems doubtful, but of course he did do a pretty good job for that Toronto team at the end of last season. The organisation, Toronto, would probably be down for it, given that he was also developed through their academy system and all this. They traded him out for Envoy. They got better, but their results over the course of the season weren't necessarily much better than when they had Hixie in the lineup towards the end of last year. So there were some questions on what you would do if you're Toronto, if Envoy was to go, and you were to be keeping the other three. We know that Hixie and Scrappy get on. It's something to at least think about. There was a bit of, well, there wasn't actually drama on this, but ReeaL tweeted this out. You what? He was late 53 times. I think he confirmed in the replies that he was talking about some guy from League of Legends or whatever. But people thought, maybe understandably, that he was talking about Simp here, right? Because ReeaL is still, as it stands, the head coach of the New York Subliners. That may be changing very shortly, right? There's been rumours that potentially there are some changes coming to that coaching staff situation. ReeaL might have offers elsewhere. Rumours of the Falcons, but Falcons then denied that. So, you know, we don't really know what's going on, obviously. But ReeaL will be somewhere as a coach. I'm pretty convinced of that next season. It may not be the New York Subliners as it has been now for a good few years, and therefore people saw this and thought, wow, is he talking about Dante, right? But just because, obviously, Civ talked about getting up too early to play, well, basically do a team workout at 9 AM or whatever they had planned, one day a week or 2 days a week, whatever it was, with the Subliners, and then as the day concluded, they then got into scrims, then they did VOD review, and it was a long day, and it was a challenging day. And did Sib miss some of those kind of like roll calls? Maybe yes, but did he miss it 53 times? Probably not. So yeah, basically ReeaL says he wasn't talking about Sib, but nonetheless there were some theories as to exactly what's happened with that roster last season. And even Dante goes on to say this: you got no dog if you need someone to bring it out of you. It's meant to be automatic. So yeah, the guys are still doing quality treats, and this was a pretty funny reply, I thought, from both perspectives. So maybe Sib's getting closer to a deal somewhere, or maybe he's just talking about, look, I'm that guy, you better sign me right about now. We've talked about Thieves, we've talked about Toronto as possibilities. I'm just very surprised personally that not much else has happened, right? Like, this has to be the slowest Rostermania that I remember, and as I said over the last few days, there are a few reasons as to why some of the organizations aren't even locked in yet. And you know, you'd imagine Toronto, Cloud9, Thieves, whatever, it's probably a complicated negotiation for Scrappy right now, which is ongoing. It has to come to a conclusion at some point. There is presumably some sort of deadline in place. A deadline is usually never necessary because the teams will just figure themselves out long before the new game arrives. But as it stands, there's like 5 weeks to the new game, 5-6 weeks to the new game, and we still don't really have any information closer than, you know, what we've had over the last few days, really. The only signing on some level has been Raincore to Miami, which is, you know, not even, well, maybe on some level I was expecting that signing. We still don't know who's gone. It's a pretty remarkable situation, to be honest. We've got to dive into a few clips, though, as a result of all this. I did firstly want to mention, really, the breakdown just in general, right? Because the breakdown, of course, has been a show that Scump and MettalZ did after, well, Zinni, of course, retires, as we'll discuss that in a second. Scump and Zin ran the show, and, you know, it was obviously molded on some level on what the flank was and still is. They took their own spin on it. They made it slightly more analytical in some sense, more clip-centric. It was more of like an actual actual show well, okay, the flank is a show, but it's kind of, the breakdown was structured, right? You'd have this segment, that segment, the other segment, and it was entertaining to watch on some level. I felt like they needed often more kind of debate. I think that's what the flank brings to the table, as much as people don't necessarily like Aches. What he does bring is interesting viewing, because you never really know what's coming next. There's always going to be some sort of debate and disagreement between the co-hosts, and that creates a pretty compelling show. The best part, I thought, of the breakdown really was when they brought the guest on, and the 2v1 segment or whatever they call it, to have that kind of like interview thing. That I found interesting. The rest of it, I could do without, in a sense. And also because often it was uploaded quite a long after the weekend's matches had concluded. It was a, interesting show, and obviously it won some awards or whatever it did. But I'm not sure whether it's going to continue. I know there's just been some debate on this, because it used to be @BreakdownPod. That was the Twitter for the show. And they've now just kind of made that Twitter into a clips Twitter. So I know that there's always been talk over the years from like Spawn Up GG and guys like this putting out clips from streams on Twitter and other social platforms, and whether that's like fair content or not, or whatever you want to say. But Spawn Up still clipping stuff and shipping stuff, so it seems like OpTic on some level have decided, right, we're going to do the same thing, and Breakdown Clips is now been formed, but Breakdown Pod, what the app used to be, no longer exists. So I know there's been some speculation onto whether the breakdown as a show is like over now, whether they're actually going to do it again next season, whether they're going to change the way that it's done. I don't know, intrigued to your thoughts in the comments, because I don't even know if they did one really around the World Championship, and I feel like the last episode at this point was quite some time ago, so intrigued to your thoughts on that. But definitely a couple of clips to share from, breakdown clips and others. Firstly, this one from ZooMaa over the last couple of days. It's always a talking point. We saw Scrappy got into this big time with ZooMaa a couple of months ago, when Scrap was like, I'd smoke all of you guys in your prime, because the community has moved on, the level of play now is higher than it was previously, and, it's always difficult to argue either way, especially because the quality of the gameplay nowadays looks different. I mean, if you take these current players, you put them back on Black Ops 2, they won't look as good because the aim assist wasn't as strong, and other factors like that. So you can't really just look back at old gameplay. Like Infinite Warfare, for example, had very weak aim assists compared to modern CODs. If you go back and watch, Formal, Crim, the Legends, they're missing shots left, right, and centre. And Scrap might go back and look at that and say, damn, these guys were terrible, I'd smoke them. But that's not quite telling the entire story, because the games were more difficult in some respects than they are today. So that goes one way, with Scrappy saying that he's better than all those guys, but it also goes the other way as well, because you can argue that ZooMaa was in an era competing against the greatest ever team, the OpTic dynasty, that Scump, Crim, Nadeshot as it was initially, and Formal team. Then of course Karma comes in for Nadeshot, and the dynasty was really formed then over the next couple of years, and ZooMaa in his prime in Advanced Warfare was fighting against that team, and that team went on to be the most dominant team ever, win the most championships ever, and those players are absolutely at the top of the all-time rankings. So winning and beating that team, very commendable. But of course other players from today would say that, well, it ain't the same story. Nowadays we're playing harder competition, there's FaZe that now exists, they've been around for a long time, and between eras it's always very challenging to compare, but it's equally difficult for Scrap to say that he'd smoke all those guys, and it is for ZooMaa to say that he'd be smoking HyDra as well.
Prime ZooMaa versus Prime HyDra, who wins? You listen, respectfully, HyDra's getting smoked, bro. Respectfully, HyDra's getting smoked. It is what it is, guys. Everybody's saying cap. Guys, I had to play a Prime Scumpy. Okay? The king. The king. That's who I had to play. A Prime King. That's how I had to win championships. I was playing the most winningest COD player of all time. Crimson Exporter. You know what I'm saying? I was playing four rings. I played 4 rings. I played a guy with 4 rings now. You know what I'm saying? And Scrappy says you played plumbers. Bro, I hate to break it to you, Scrappy, but there's 3 good teams in the league, brother. There's 3. There's 3 good teams in there's 4 teams that are good in the league. The rest of the teams are always shit. It's literally a top-heavy league. How you gonna say you play plumbers, bro? Bro, you're literally playing shit kids.
He's really playing next year.
Yo, Scrap, pick him up, you fucking weirdo.
I don't see none.
Stop being a freak, brother.
Dude, what are you on about, man?
Yeah.
I'm a crappy god.
You HyDra, Tej, and me. I bring out the best in Tej. I promise with you and HyDra in my arsenal, we wouldn't lose. I promise.
Oh my god, we'd be so dog shit.
We actually wouldn't. You're fucking dumb.
we actually would.
I could win with my dad and HyDra. We can do me,
Zinn
Tony,
would watch,
Zinny.
Zinn would watch his dad shower for a year straight if he had to play with HyDra.
I already told HyDra I'll play for free.
Do you wish you finished the year out, Zen?
Yes. If I could go back, I would have.
retired a wild time. I was surprised you ripped the midseason.
Yeah, I mean, only because my team actually was good, which a lot of people, like our
You were
team
having
was
a good
actually,
year, right?
I was pretty good, yeah. Our team was actually good to the point where if we just translated it once, we could have won, and people think that I sound delusional when I say that, but I truly do mean that.
You wouldn't have won an MW2. There's no way.
I don't know, our team actually was gross. If we just had one series on land that just...
Yeah,
And then I left and they fell apart.
Yeah, the ore just broke in half.
I thought Ben Beans was big enough to fill my shoes.
He's so good. I actually am a big Ben Beans guy. I actually think he's disgusting, but he's just dumb sometimes.
I was actually Elmer for Boston.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought that orb was gonna live forever. Like, not just
bro,
live forever, but
it's
like...
a good org. It really is a good org. I feel so bad
They
for him.
seemed like invincible.
I feel so bad for him.
So this is very interesting just because HyDra and ZooMaa had another bit of a back and forth here when HyDra was actually talking about how ZooMaa would have been such a great SMG duo for him, being on every pinch and all this, because we know that ZooMaa had to retire due to the wrist injury and the carpal tunnel symptoms and this type of stuff at the start of effectively the Cold War season. That was when HyDra was coming in, and because of that, that was in part consequential in getting HyDra his opportunity in the league, but it could definitely have worked out whereby HyDra and ZooMaa ended up as, you know, teammates for some time, and they, you know, that would have been a really good SMG duo, I think. Like, HyDra and ZooMaa as a potential duo would have been phenomenal. So, and it would have been great to see then, if they had played together for some time, what ZooMaa's opinion might well be on exactly where HyDra stands. Because back then, HyDra was pretty new. He was obviously very good in Cold War, but he wasn't as good as he was over the couple of years afterwards. I think in some sense, HyDra might have got better every single year that he's played. And, you know, ZooMaa in his prime was probably, we're talking 2015, right? We're talking way back in the day. ZooMaa was still a very solid player after that, but probably Advanced Warfare ZooMaa was considered to be his best year. And that's a long time ago to really compare players, but at that time, ZooMaa was in the conversation with Scump for being the best SMG in the game, as is HyDra to this day in the conversation with, you know, the likes of Simp and Shotzzy and others for being the best SMG in the game. So, you know, but HyDra, of course, is potentially considered best player in the game, full stop. So, you know, you can compare the different eras. It's always going to be a challenging one, and tweet your thoughts down below as always. The other point as well that I wanted to mention, and of course it's very easy for me to share a clip that has Black Ops 3 in the background. Good to see the boys are back on this game playing, you know, wages and money 8s or whatever's going on at the moment, and ZooMaa's here, well, not ZooMaa, MettalZ is here doing some warming up, and he's talking about potentially the Cloud9 team, because they've got a former roster. What are they going to do? We know that they have an interesting team that they're building with probably HyDra's going to stay, and then the rest of the guys, you know, Simp and Kismet probably going to stay as well. They either need a fourth or they need something else going on, and MettalZ is like, hey, how about you pick me up and, you know, bring Scrappy, MettalZ, TJ, and HyDra or something back to the team. Zinny, if he made the comeback, I mean, like, in terms of old school players to make the comeback, he's not necessarily top of my list, right? Like OpTic and stuff like this, I think could come back and maybe do a good job. But as Zinny said, maybe in hindsight, he could have retired a little bit later in the season, because it was a remarkable moment, right? When I was there in Boston, it was the first event that I'd been to in like years, right? Over there in Boston at the start of 2023, and Zinny, who'd played for Boston, they had a decent run that weekend. They then bowed out of the tournament, and he came out onto the main stage, and, you know, I think there'd been a couple of rumors behind the scenes over the last couple of days that there was something going to be happening here, and you know, it was a realization for many in the crowd that damn, Zinny's going to retire. And in hindsight, that made a fair bit of sense, because Scump had retired like a month before or whatever, and Scump was basically telling Zinny, hey, like, come to OpTic, do the content stuff, and we're going to absolutely kill it. And, you know, then MettalZ decided, you know what, that makes sense. But obviously in hindsight, he probably could have done so at the end of the season, still played for the rest of the year, and then formed everything that happened with Scump and OpTic at the end of the season, right? So, you know, the future is green, as he said at the time. And MettalZ was still pretty good that season, to be fair, and certainly the year before in Cold War, he obviously had a very good season, had that 1 versus 4 clutch and all that. And, you know, there was a possibility for MettalZ to stay around a little bit longer. Would he have been part of like a championship winning roster or whatever. Like, look, but it might have changed the trajectory of Boston on some level, right? The fact that they had to get rid of Zinni, it did change their mentality and their mindset and their direction, Boston, over the next year or so. Certainly what they had to do as a result of that. And therefore, maybe in hindsight, it could have made some difference to what we've seen with that Boston organization over the last couple of years. But very much interested to your thoughts, as always, on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.